Hello, Tom the Taleteller here. Thank you once again for coming and joining me with a story. So as you may remember, I am a storyteller. I tell myths, legends, folk tales from around the world. No books, no scripts, no aids, just the story, my brain, and your ears and your imagination. Stories I tell mean nothing without an audience, so I rely on people to tell to. And of course, at the moment, there isn't anyone to tell to because we're all shut up. And so I'm spreading the joy, spreading the story through the wonders of technology. Now, my story today is very prevalent for these times. I've worked with children from the ages of 0 right the way up to teenagers. There's one thing I've noticed about all teenagers and children and babies and toddlers. They all like to pick their nose. I've also noticed that grown-ups like to do it too, but they do it in a lot more subtle way. They try not to be noticed. A lot of the time, though, you can spot them doing it when they're driving the car. They're rooting around. My story starts with Max. Max is 9 years old, and he, like most 9-year-old boys, likes playing football, riding his bike, playing computer games, and picking his nose. But unlike most 9-year-old boys, he doesn't like to eat the bogey that he's mined from deep within his nose. No, it's too salty, he doesn't like it. So he puts it under his chair, puts it under a table, or his best favourite, he wipes it down his sister's back. Ugh. But his mum was fed up. She would keep saying to him, Max, put it in a tissue, put it in the bin, and then go and wash your hands. Every time he'd pick his nose, put it in a tissue, put it in the bin, and go and wash your hands. Put it in a tissue, put it in the bin, and go and wash your hands. Well, of course, that's what we should all be doing. Good hygiene and all that, especially now, washing our hands whenever we've touched our mouth and our nose. But Max just ignored it. He would pick his nose with wild abandon and wipe it wherever he liked. One day, however, he'd gone down to London with his mum and his little sister. They'd gone to the Natural History Museum. Then they'd gone to see Buckingham Palace and Big Ben and Trafalgar Square. And they'd been riding around on the open-top bus. And they had a great time. And when they got back, Max was rooting around 2 knuckles deep. And he pulled out a great stringy one. And this one was not green or yellow. It was black. Black as the ace of spades. Black as coal. And he went to his mum and he said, Mum, what's that? And his mum started to heave. And she said, look, I tell you, will you put it in a tissue, put it in the bin, and for goodness sake, wash your hands? Yeah, he said, promise. So she said, your nose plays a very important role in your body. It stops all the germs and nasty stuff in the air from going right into your snoz, into your body and causing you to get ill. And down in London, she said, down in London, those cars and those buses and those taxis and those lorries, they produce lots of pollution in the air. And all that pollution, all that smog gets trapped in your nose hairs, in your snot, and makes these big black bogies. That's what it's there for. And yes, you do have to pick your nose, Max. You do have to get rid of those bogies. But for goodness sake, please stop wiping it everywhere. Please stop wiping it on your sister's back. Just put it in a tissue, put it in the bin, and wash your hands. Well, Max didn't want to do this. Max was a boy full of curiosities. And so he decided he was going to collect his snot from now on to track and mark how the snot changed colour. He went to the recycling bin, very carefully keeping the snot and the bogey on his finger. He picked out an old jam jar, he washed it clean, and he smeared the snot in, and he stuck a label on it, and it said, Max's snot number 1. Well, this started an obsession with Max. He started collecting his snot, putting it in the jar. By the end of the first week, it was full. So we moved on to jar number 2. Then 3, then 4, then 5, and 6, 7, 8. By the time he got to jar number 15, his mum was at the end of her tether. She said, "Look, Max, if you carry on picking your nose, you'll start not just picking bogies, but you'll start picking bits of your brain. You will." What a load of nonsense, thought Max. But you know what? Very occasionally, mums are right. And she was. This time, you see, what Max hadn't realised was that he was picking bits of brain. With every lump of snot that went into jar number 15, there was a tiny speck of black brain. And this black brain sat there in the jar. And as he was picking away bits of his brain, of course, he started to get a bit thick. At class, at school, the teacher would say, "Class, what is 2 times 2? And Max would shout out, "Elephants!" You thought it was right. But then half his brain was now in jar number 15. If you look very carefully, you can see the bits of brain floating in the jar. By the time jar number 15 was finished, he placed it on a shelf. All 15 jars so far full, collected, were on the shelf when he went to bed that night. He drew his curtains, but not quite far enough, because you know how children are, they're very lazy. That would do. He turned off his light, he jumped into bed, and he snuggled down, and within minutes he was asleep. And then, as the moon rose, fat, bright and round, it shone its silver moonlight down onto the back garden of Max's house, down onto the back of Max's house, and down onto the window of Max's room, and it found that crack in his curtains, and a silver moonbeam shone through that crack and upon to jar number 15. And we all know, don't we, friends? We all know, my dears, strange things happen in the moonlight. And so it was that those black bits of brain started to slowly move up through the slimy snot and gather in a ball at the top. And they made a small little brain that started to pulse, boom, 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 like a heart. And purple and blue sparks shot down through the jar, and the jar began to shake. And the other jars, they began to shake and rattle too, until all 15 jars smashed upon the floor. Do you think this woke up Max? No, don't be daft. It takes more than a few jars smashing on the floor to wake up a 9-year-old boy. What he did wake up to, though, was the shouts in the morning from his mum. Not the usual shouts of, "Max, get up, we're going to be late for school," but a terrifying, "Ah!" Max jumped out of bed and he halted. He then saw the smashed glass all over the floor, but no bogies. Leading from the smashed glass were 2 slimy slug trails going down the stairs. Max followed them, picking his way carefully through the smashed glass with his bare feet. Down the stairs he went into the kitchen, where he was met with a terrible sight. There, cowering in the corner of the kitchen, was his mother. "Help! Get it away there! I don't want to be slimed!" she shouted. And then, getting closer and closer to his mother was his snot. But it had taken form. You see, it had 2 feet, 2 legs, a body, 2 arms, a neck, a head, and on top of the head, that miniature brain pulsating like a heart, sending the purpley blue shots of lightning through the snot, controlling it, dragging its feet along the floor in an awkward shuffle. And Max thought, if I don't stop that thing, it will slime my mum and I'll be in trouble for weeks. I'll be grounded for months, he thought. He thought to himself, I can't believe I've done this. I've only gone and created my very own bogeyman. But how was he going to stop the bogeyman that he'd made? Half of his brain was now sat on top of the bogeyman, and he was thinking hard, but it was very hard to think with only half a brain. And then he just kept thinking about what his mum would say. Bogies. Mum would say, bogies, bogies, bogies. Put them in a tissue, put them in the bin and wash your hands. Put them in a tissue, put them in the bin and wash your hands. Put them in a tissue, put them in the bin and wash your hands. Put them in a tissue. Tissues. That's what's going to control this bogeyman. Where is he going to find a tissue big enough, he thought. Last week at school, they'd been doing the ancient Egyptians, and they'd wrapped each other up in toilet roll. This was a pre-coronavirus world, and so he had lots of toilet rolls still upstairs, and he ran upstairs, and he grabbed a handful of toilet rolls, and he came down. He put a finger in the bottom of one, and he put the end of the toilet roll onto the back or heel of the bogeyman, and he put his finger in the top of the roll, and he began to run round and round and round, wrapping up the bogeyman like a mummy, just like they did in their ancient Egyptian topic the week before. Round and 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 round he went, and stopped because he was dizzy. And then round and round and round and round and round and round. Well, you get the idea. Eventually the bogeyman was wrapped from head to slimy toe with toilet tissue. He put it in a tissue. It worked. The bogeyman couldn't move. But what now? A bin. You've got to put it in a bin, he thought. But where's he going to find a bin big enough? Beep, beep. Caution, vehicle reversing. Beep, beep. Caution, vehicle reversing. It was Wednesday. Wednesdays are bin lorry days. The bin lorry's coming down his street. It was reversing. It always had to because it was a tight little close. And his wheelie bin was outside. That was big enough. He grabbed hold of the snotty, slimy bogeyman and he picked it up with snot and slime oozing out from between the toilet tissue. Then he carried it out the front door. He carried it to the wheelie bin where he flipped the lid. He grabbed the ankle of the bogeyman, he lifted it up and flipped it headfirst into the wheelie bin where its head and the brain went splat onto the floor of the wheelie bin. And as soon as the brain splattered, the bogeyman lost all form. At that very moment, the bin man came up. He said, "Good morning," and he wheeled off the wheelie bin. And Max watched as it lifted up, and the snot disappeared into the back of the bin lorry. He'd done it. He'd stopped the bogeyman. He'd rescued his mother, but he was still in massive, massive trouble. He had to clean up the glass with the help of his mother. He had to clean up all the snot out of the carpet. And he was grounded for 2 weeks. 2 weeks with no TV. And you think staying inside for a few months is going to be bad. Imagine being 9 and staying for 2 weeks with no TV in your own room. Ah! Well, Max's brain slowly grew back. The body's a wonderful thing. But do you think, my friends, he ever picked his nose again? If you said no, then you're wrong. Because he's a 9-year-old boy with bogies just like you and I. Of course he picked his nose. But every time he picked his nose, he made sure he put it in a tissue and put it in the... And then he went to wash his hands. Every time he picked his nose, it went in a tissue, went in the bin and washed his hands. And you watching out there, I need to make sure you have got the message. If you want to avoid the bogeyman or any other nasties in your life, then yes, by all means, pick your nose, because it's important to keep our noses free of snot and bogies. But as soon as you do, put that in a tissue. Put that tissue in the bin. Then go and wash your hands while singing happy birthday. Or apparently Take On Me works as well. Take on me. Well, you get the idea. I won't bore you with my singing anymore. Thank you for listening. That was my own personal story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment maybe, and share. Share it on socials, share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it on Instagram and Snapchat or whatever the kids do nowadays. This way we can share the story, we can share a bit of a laugh and a bit of a joke, and hopefully get through this together. Thank you. Goodbye.